Today, I'd like to continue our discussion of recycling and the idea of overhauling our recycling system. One of the key elements in terms of the environment today is the fact that we have so much garbage and so much pollution as a result of the garbage. Tackling this problem, it's a huge problem, it's a complicated problem, but it's an essential problem, really, to developing good environmental stewardship. What Pope Francis calls for in Laudate Si in terms of an ecological conversion. Conversions are hard because we're used to doing things a certain way. So when Pope Francis says, well, maybe we should change this, maybe we should do that, people are like, no, we're used to doing it, and of course the constant refrain, we've always done it that way. So we introduced last time in the first part of this section in terms of recycling, introduced the concept of extended producer responsibility. Very important and a key concept with this idea of trying to reduce waste. And the idea is that if you produce a product, if you put a product out there for sale, there has to be some way of that product, the packaging, returning to you. If it just goes to the customer and the customer puts it in the garbage and the garbage goes to the landfill, well, we've got garbage all over the place. We're running out of room for garbage. We have garbage. We have all this plastic pollution in our oceans, plastic pollution that's gotten into our soil, into our food, into our fish, into our wildlife. So it's really an out of control situation that we have to take a handle on. So this extended producer responsibility concept is a key concept. We find it in a place in Maine, in Oregon, some cities in the US, and much of Europe and Canada. So it's not a new concept. It's not a concept that hasn't been tried. It's not a concept that hasn't been found effective. But of course, there's a big pushback. And the pushback, of course, comes from the manufacturers because they don't want this responsibility. They want the responsibility to be on the customer, and the customer gives the responsibility to the state, to the locality, to the garbage people, and there's really no responsibility then. This concept is important because it reduces waste and it reduces carbon emissions. So it's a key element in terms of environmental stewardship, a very important concept. We certainly want to do everything we can to reduce waste, and this wood, the packaging, is key in terms of reducing the waste, obviously. And also the carbon emissions, because the carbon emissions coming from the waste, yes, but coming from transportation and all sorts of elements with getting the waste to the dump, to the landfill, or putting it on a train and taking it away. All of these things create carbon emissions, which we want to minimize, of course. The 2017 decision by China to stop importing recycled materials from the US was a key move in this whole process. What we used to do is take all our waste and ship it to China. And again, when you think about it, is this crazy? We are producing this waste and we're sending it to another country, and this other country, huge land area, they, well, we'll take it and, we'll get money for it. I mean, they try to make it economically viable for them to receive this fees and all of that. But when you look at it, why are we in America sending our waste to another country and putting it on boats and, again, all of the emissions that are related with that process? I mean, does that make sense? Is that logical? And is it fair to the Chinese? Certainly it wasn't. But over and above that, is it fair to our air, to our water, and to our soil, which we are polluting? Um, and the idea is that this, of course, made recycling more expensive for municipalities. And what happens when recycling becomes more expensive for municipalities is that that cost is passed on to the taxpayer. So it's not that, the state is now going to, have these special funds to take care of it. No, it comes from our taxes. So we are subsidizing, we are paying for this extra cost to get rid of this packaging, this material. The critics of this extended producer responsibility say, well, this is not a good thing because the fees will hurt business, and you don't want to do anything that will hurt business. Or, secondly, the fees will be passed on to the consumer. And of course, this is an important objection to consider. You don't want to hurt a business, throw a business out of existence because of this. And you don't want the consumer paying extra, although, of course, the consumer is paying extra in terms of taxes. So, I mean, consumer is paying for this anyway in terms of the municipality and getting rid of this material. But the important thing is, well, is there an alternative? Is there some way that we can make packaging that can go back to the manufacturer to be reused in a good way so that we're not creating more plastic and we're keeping it in this closed system of constant use? This would be, of course, the logical way to deal with it. So we're not throwing it out, we're reusing it, and we don't have to produce more of it and all of the carbon emissions that take to produce this plastic. We have to take that in consideration. The plastic is not made carbon neutral. It's manufactured in plastic factories that have a negative impact, obviously, on the air quality, on the environment, on our carbon footprint. Advocates for it say we have to reduce waste at its source. We have to say, where is the waste coming from? Let's attack it at its source. And that is, of course, an important concept. We have to say, well, the waste is coming from the manufacturer who is creating the product in this particular packaging. And so we have to reduce that waste right there. We have to either design it in a different way or make it so that that packaging can be recycled. So how do we do this? Well, we change our packaging, obviously. We look at it and say, well, we have to package in a different way. Paper, plastic, in terms of how we package. So using clear plastic containers rather than those with color added. So if the color is added, it becomes more difficult to recycle. And also it's more expensive to make, adding the color. So again, making the clear cartons. Reusable containers that can either be mailed back or dropped off at collection points. So again, this idea of the reusable container. Of course, we all remember in previous days where the person who's delivering milk would bring the bottle to you and there'd be a milk box and you'd put out the empties, they'd take the empties and give you that. So this idea of reusable is not a new idea. It's something that we have had in the past and something that is important to look at again. And in our next session on this, we'll talk a little bit more about some ways to do this because obviously this is going to be a very important concept for our environmental stewardship, and we all want to be good stewards of this wonderful gift that we've been given, this gift of the environment, this gift from God. God bless.